Hello everyone, it's Dr. Angela Moameka with Mark 9 Pediatrics, and it is story time with Dr. Mo. So May story time, as I've been announcing for the past week, is all about building a heart for inclusion and acceptance from infancy all the way through to adulthood. I have a couple of really great books that I want to share with you, but of course throughout the month I'm going to be sharing several books that are great for working with your kiddos and your families to help them learn about new cultures, new families, different styles, different ethnicities, and really not make it weird, right? Make sure that you're doing it in a way that just fits in with everything else that you're doing, just like the rest of your life. Before I do that, I want to say hello to everyone. Unfortunately, I'm having some strange technical difficulties, which is why I started a little bit later than usual. So I can't see folks who have joined Storytime, but I will say hello and I will be speaking blankly, hoping that I am speaking to someone. But yes, hello, thanks for joining. Unfortunately, I can't see your name, so I can't say hi specifically to you, but thanks for joining. So as always with Storytime, there's three things that we do. The first is the literacy theme of the month. So as I shared already, it is building a heart for inclusion and diversity, inclusion and acceptance from infancy all the way through to adulthood. The second thing is book recommendations. And today I'm going to be flipping through a couple of books that I love. Oh my gosh, Hair Love is one of my favorite books. I love the story. I love how the author uses very subtle ways to teach us about breaking down some stereotypes and understanding how we're more the same than different. And then of course, Curious George, which a lot of kids love. My son used to love this book. And all about, once again, taking the opportunity to use a very simple and everyday activity and use it to build diversity or to build that feeling of inclusion and how it's not, everyone doesn't look like us, right? So these two books I'm going to be talking about and flipping through later. But first I wanted to share with you, it's May. May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Now February, just a couple of months ago, was Black History Month. We know in September, Hispanic Heritage Month goes on. There's so many of these. There's so many of these celebrations of cultures that are in our community. And yes, it's a great celebration for people in that culture, right? To talk about civic cultural pride and how they love who they are and embrace who they are. But I think, and I'll challenge you with this, more importantly, it's for people who aren't in that culture, right? It's all about giving us an opportunity to learn about people, places, foods, beliefs that we may not be familiar with. It's an exposure for us. And it really helps to enrich our lives. So everything from finding out who invented certain things that we've taken for granted, to new flavors that excite us and kind of play with our taste buds, to even just understanding why people believe certain things and why people do things in a certain way. These types of celebrations help to break down the walls of prejudice and really help us to better understand different cultures, especially cultures that are not our own. And hi, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm seeing people now. At first I wasn't, my phone was doing something funky and I couldn't see anything but my screen, but great, I could see things popping up now, which is wonderful. So I have a saying that I like to share, and I just was thinking about it over the last few years in terms of what it means to really accept someone. So I begin by saying that love begins with acceptance. Acceptance begins with understanding. Understanding needs knowledge, and knowledge relies on exposure. So what you're doing throughout the month, I'm going to be sharing with some ways for you to do this, but what you're doing when you're trying to build that heart of diversity and acceptance and inclusion in your child is you're exposing them to things that help them understand, help them know, which allows them to then accept and begin to love people who may not look and act and think and etc. like they do. And that's what it's all about. I said earlier, don't make it weird. And this is like my strong thing. Please don't make it weird. I mean, there are just no parents, maybe there are, who go into a grocery store and start saying, hey, Johnny, there's a kid in a wheelchair. Oh, it looks like that's a single mother. Oh my gosh, I think that's a same-sex couple. And oh, wow, look at that Asian American child. We don't do that. But when our kids see that and see the normalness of it and see us interacting with people as people, not by their race or whether they're walking or disabled or not, they see us interacting with them at a personal level, that builds in them an acceptance, right? To say that everyone who deserves love doesn't look like me, doesn't act like me, doesn't think like me. And that's so important. So throughout the month, again, I'm going to be recommending some books, but I want to show you these two books. So Curious George Goes to the Dentist. And Curious George Going to the Dentist basically is a simple book, right? It's very, very basic. It's actually something that a dentist shared with us. But it's a book about, little monkey George who hurts his tooth, and it's a loose tooth now. So this is his milk tooth, his baby tooth, and it's loose, and he has to go to the dentist. And I love that his next door neighbor is an elderly widowed lady, right? So we always think of racism and sexism, but we forget ageism. Sometimes our kids are seeing people who are young like their parents or their parents' age, or they're seeing people their age. They don't always see elderly people unless they have grandparents. And it's great to see that blend of ages. And I like books that do that casually without making a point of it or calling it out. Now George, this is my favorite part. He goes, usual typical kind of behavior for a kid going to the dentist for the first time. He's nervous. He's not sure what to expect. He's trying to delay things. And then he walks into the waiting room, and I love that the author had many opportunities to just paint people or draw people who look just like the author, right? It's our comfort level. It's what we know. These are what our family members look like. But he said, I'm I say he as in the illustrator, I'm making sure that you can see this, show a variety of races and sexes. I'm going to show basically that you can have a redhead and a blonde and a child who is Asian American and a child who is brown and dark skinned. You can have them all interacting the way children interact because they're all children. That's the important thing. Not a black child, not a white child, but a child, right? I love that they did that in the waiting room. And then they go through the book. And this is my other favorite part. The dentist is Dr. Wang. Oh my gosh. Letting kids hear names and see people that don't necessarily fit what the majority culture is so important, because they will see this in their lives and they need to have that feeling of normalcy about it. There's nothing atypical about it. And breaking down those stereotypes that only people of certain types who have certain sounding names should be in certain roles is part of childhood without you having to say it in an adult way. You can just build it in this way to just normalize it, right? They didn't announce, oh, it is going to be an Asian American dentist. No, he just went to the dentist and that was it. And the dentist happened to be a person who is a different culture than the man in yellow, right? And the yellow hat. So this book, one of my favorites, I love books like this. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about building a heart for inclusion and acceptance. It's not making it always about books that focus on a certain culture. It's also about books that talk about how we in everyday life are going to see people who look like us. We're also going to see people who may not look like us, and that's important. The other book is Hair Love. Oh my gosh. Now, Hair Love is a lovely, lovely book, right? So Hair Love talks about a little girl, Zuri. And Zuri has kind of hair like Dr. Momeka. So Zuri has this kinky, coily, curly hair, and she is so proud of her hair. It's incredible. I love the story, right? And she's not proud of it because it's different, because it's this or that. She's proud of it because it's her hair. It's her hair, and she loves the way her hair is, which is a typical thing. And the book goes on and goes through some things that are really subtle. And I don't know if everyone who reads this book sees it, but it's intentional, right? I like that Zuri talks about the way her hair shrinks when it's wet, stretches out when it's dry. And she's just talking about her hair matter-of-factly. But Zuri talks about her dad, who we see looks like a younger man who has dreadlocks and a tattoo and is wearing basketball shorts, and he's so tired because he's always taking care of her and doesn't have time for himself. He's working, he's taking care of her, he's taking her to the park. He's a busy guy with this little one, and he's the one who helps her do her hair. And for kids, they're not going to probably notice this, but adults have some preconceptions, right? And I can speak for myself and say that you thought, okay, this is a book about a single dad. Oh my gosh, he's doing her hair. I love it. I love it. I love it. And you go through the book, and Zuri wants a special hairstyle for a special day. And you don't know what that special day is. They don't say. But when she finally, they go through different hairstyles. She finally finds the perfect hairstyle, which she is so happy about, right? She's like, okay, we're gonna find the perfect hairstyle, and she's excited. The cape is there. She's like, yes, this is it. And then we find out what the special day is. You ready? It's her mama coming home. And you see that, no, it's not a single dad. He's married. They're in this really typical nuclear family, and it's like anyone else's family, right? There's nothing different. And I think that's really what the author is trying to drive here, is that yes, people can look different, but we're more the same than we are different. And I love how the book ends. It ends with a picture of them as a family, and it says, "My hair is mommy, daddy, and me. It's hair love." And I think that's for anyone, whether you are African American, you are white, you're Asian American, whatever it is, your family is your family, and it's what makes you special. Now, the third part of story time is where I share an early brain development fact, and it's the reason why certain topics pop in my mind, and I say this is what story time should be about. So the early brain development fact for today is a really critical one. First of all, adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, are experiences that children go through from being in the womb all the way through to their first few years of life that actually change the way their brain works and sets them up for their future as adults. Now, adverse childhood experiences like prejudice and racism have been shown to have significant effects on children's emotional, mental, and physical health. It spans their entire lifetime, and it actually affects their DNA. We know this, that it's actually changing their DNA, and it's changing the way that they respond to trauma and to other situations that come into their lives. And being able as parents, right, to break that cycle is important. And the way that we can do that is to raise inclusive kids. Throughout the month, I'm going to be sharing some books. They're not all going to be the same kinds of books. There are different ways and different examples for you on how you can raise an inclusive kid. It's so important. If anyone has comments, questions, I always say, please post them, or feel free to absolutely send me a message after the story time, and I will respond to you, whether on Facebook, on Instagram, or at the office, 972-325-2005. Now, one of the things I wanted to end with, or the thing I wanted to end with, is talking about prejudice in general and what I'm referring to, so that when you see the books, you can really understand what the point of these books are, or is. So prejudice is really just that prejudging of someone before you know really anything to do with that person for themselves. And a lot of times it's based on something physical and irreversible, or something that the person cannot change. So we're talking about not just racism and sexism and ageism, but even looking at people from another country who have an accent, people in a wheelchair, people who have mental health disorders. These are all different ways that we really exclude people and prejudge people and start to make stories up in our minds about people. So for me, the books are going to really touch on all that and how we can blend things together, either learning more about different types of people, races, cultures, ethnicities, ways of life, or seeing how we all come together and can function as a community together. You all have a great rest of your day. I hope you've enjoyed this. I've surely enjoyed speaking to you. Oh my gosh, I missed a comment. So David Dooley, let's see here. I'm reaching forward. Okay, so this is excellent. I hope people can see what has been posted in the comments, and of course, feel free to reach out individually. And if you have any other questions or comments, again, drop me a line, drop me a comment, give us a call. You all have a good rest of your day.